My social justice project that I did on was mental health. What is mental health? Mental health refers to our cognitive, behavioral, and emotional well-being. It is all about how we think, feel, and behave. The term mental health is sometimes used to mean an absence of a mental disorder or coping with a mental disorder. Mental health can affect daily life, relationships, and even physical health. Mental health includes a person's ability to enjoy life, to attain a balance between life activities and efforts to achieve psychological resilience. Facts about mental health. Number 1, about over 800,000 people die due to suicide every year, and suicide is the second leading cause of death in between 15 and 29-year-olds. There are indications that for each adult who died of suicide, there may have been more than 20 others attempting suicide. 75% of suicides occur in low and middle income areas. Mental disorders and harmful use of alcohol contribute to many suicides around the world. Number 2, mental health is chronic but not contagious. This means that a chronic disease affects only one person. Contagious means the disease could be transmitted from one person to another by either touching, breathing, etc. Number 3, misunderstanding and stigma surrounding mental ill health are widespread. Despite the existence of effective treatments for mental disorders, there's a belief that they are untreatable or that people with mental disorders are difficult, not intelligent, or incapable of making decisions. This stigma can lead to abuse, rejection, and isolation, and exclude people from healthcare or support. Within the health system, people are too often treated in institutions which resemble human warehouses rather than places of healing. Number 4, a shortage of psychiatrists, psychiatric nurses, psychologists, and social workers are among the main barriers to providing treatment and care in low and middle income areas. Low-income regions have 0.05 psychiatrists and 0.42 nurses per 100,000 people. The rate of psychiatrists in high-income areas is 170 times greater, and for nurses it is 70 times greater. Mental health can happen to anyone. Many people suffer from mental health issues and they don't even know that they are suffering. My community service site. The community service site that I worked at was at the NYU Bellevue Hospital, Manhattan. I observed the social workers doing their job in the social work department of the hospital. I observed how they worked with mental health patients who needed help when they arrived in the hospital and when they left. The social workers had to interview the patients to determine what type of services that they needed. For example, if the person was a mental health patient but was not taking their medication, they needed to make arrangements for a medical person to visit the patient at their home to make sure that medications were taken. This became complicated when the person was homeless because there was no medical help available in the shelters and the patient came back to the hospital and the cycle was repeated again. I saw that this was a frustrating part of the job of the social work because they do not have additional support that they needed to help a patient. I could not be present anywhere near patients because it was a policy of the hospital. Sometimes the social worker also had to make arrangements so that the patients can go to a safe environment when they leave the hospital. This may involve having to find relatives who would be willing to assist the patient for a short amount of time until they get well. If the patient was mentally ill, then the social worker needed to make long-term arrangements so that eventually they will become self-sufficient. Many times when I was there, these arrangements were difficult, and the patient could not be discharged from the hospital, and the bosses would be angry with the social worker because it cost the hospital a lot of money when the patient cannot leave. This was a very difficult job, and many people left, and the department did not have enough workers to cover the caseloads. But they all said that they helped liking people and wished they had more support for the work that they did. I also assisted with some light office work and filing. History of my site. In 1798, the city purchased Bellevue Farm, a property near the East River several miles north of the settled city, which had been used to quarantine the sick during a series of yellow fever outbreaks. When the grid system of streets was established in 1811, the survey had to take the hospital into account, and the placement of First Avenue on the grid is mainly due to the location of Bellevue. The hospital was formerly named Bellevue Hospital in 1824. Life and dignity of the human person. The Catholic Church proclaims that human life is sacred and that the dignity of the human person is the foundation of a moral vision for society. This theme relates to the service work I am doing because I listened, observed, and took notes while the social workers were doing their jobs. I cannot observe them in the presence of a patient. Call to family, community, and participation. Community is an important part of a person's life. Family is a cornerstone of community and is the most important part of a person's life. Participation in community is the right for all people to participate in all aspects of human society. The theme relates to the service work because in the hospital that I volunteer is a big, warm, happy family. They care about you and what you have gone through. They are a community who will cherish and will forever support you. The social workers also reach out to family members to support their patients. Rights and responsibilities. The reason we need to have human rights is because they give us a moral vision of human dignity. The human rights that we have are being free and equal, no discrimination, the right to life, no slavery, the right to travel, the list goes on and on. The responsibility that go along with our rights would be if a person had the right to education. We need to take the opportunity and learn it. This theme relates to service work that I volunteer because people with mental illness are discriminated. People make fun of handicapped and mentally challenged people because it's not the ordinary. It's a very sad thing because the government took away the asylums for mentally ill people because they wanted to spend the money on army or other important things. The government didn't think mental health people needed a special home. People with mental illness running around the streets are homeless. The human rights of these individuals, such as the right to live with dignity, the right to earn a living, the right to live without discrimination, are related to my service work. The needs of everyone must be addressed, and the needs of the mentally ill people are just as important as other people. Options for the poor and vulnerable. We are called to put the needs of the poor and vulnerable first. We believe political institutions should craft a just and fair policy. The mental health needs of the poor and vulnerable are not addressed since there is less medical personnel available in low-income areas. This means that access to treatment for the poor and vulnerable who are mentally ill is not the same for similar people in high-income areas. In my work, I observe that it is the poor and vulnerable that needs these services even more. The dignity of work and the rights of workers. Human being needs to work in order to earn money to live. They need money to buy food, pay the rent, and buy clothes. These are basic needs that people need to live in our society. In the workplace, differences in human beings become real because the supervisor is not at the same level of the worker. They are paid a fraction of minimum wage to do meaningless jobs as crushing cans or licking the envelopes. They are isolated from regular people and are treated differently. There's a program, the Individual Placement and Support, IPS, which helps mentally ill people get jobs, and it supports their mental health recovery. The IPS helps them by giving minimum wages and offers the same benefits as regular people. IPS is not just for disabled people, it's for anyone who wants a job. The service work I did involves mentally ill people. Solidarity. Solidarity is all about unity. We are one family and all are made of God's image. We come together to help one another. Being in solidarity means expressing support for a group of people. An example would be the terrorist attack in Paris 2 years ago. Many countries came together as one to honor and to show sympathy for the 17 people who died. This theme relates to the service work I have committed to do is because people who have mental illness are discriminated by how they act or look. As a result, they are only given menial jobs and face discrimination in the workplace. An example would be autism because there are some people who have autism and they can work but they are denied jobs or not getting paid as much. Care for God's creation. Humans were given control over the earth to cultivate and take care of it. In the first 2 chapters of Genesis, God's plans for us was to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the sky, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. To be a good steward means to use and develop the resources on the earth for the good of all people. The only problem is that we have taken advantage of the earth that God gave us. We think we could do whatever we want with the earth and not realize that there will be consequences to be held. This stimulates the service work that I've committed to do is because we all dismiss the needs of the mentally ill and do not understand that their needs must also be taken into consideration because they are also part of God's creation that exists on the earth. What was the greatest lesson you learned during this experience? The greatest lesson I have learned was to always treat people with kindness. Mental health is a serious thing because it affects many people. I also learned that there are so many people who do not give a care about the mentally ill because they do not understand their needs. If we understand what is happening to people, we can care better for them and we will be better human beings in the process. I interviewed my social worker. The 2 questions I asked her was, why were you interested in this work? She said, I wanted to have a job to make a difference in people's life. Being a social worker in a hospital helped me to achieve that goal. I have to take care of the needs of patients when they are discharged from the hospital and when they are admitted. The second question I asked her was, do you consider your job as a social justice? She said, yes, there must be an advocate for the needs of people who are disadvantaged or unable to help themselves.